blue waters of Kepler 442b had turned red. Elder Kithara floated near the surface of what was once called the Sacred Pool, watching the crimson stain spread across her dying world. Above her, the sky burned with angry orange light as their sun threw deadly fire into space. "The temperature has risen another degree," said Merdan, her youngest advisor. His bioluminescent patches flickered with worry, bright blue pulses that meant fear in the ancient Zilani language of light. "The southern colonies report their breeding pools are already boiling." Kithara closed her 3 eyes and felt the weight of 3.2 million lives pressing down on her aged shoulders. The Zilani had lived in these oceans for over 50,000 years. They had built beautiful cities beneath the waves, created art from living coral, and developed a peaceful society that valued wisdom over war. Now their star was killing them all. "Have the Skywatchers received any response to our calls for help?" she asked. Mirdan's light patterns dimmed. "Nothing, Elder. We have sent messages to every corner of space for 3 full cycles. No one answers." The Elder Zilani knew why. 2 months ago, the great ships of the Galactic Consortium had arrived in their system. The aliens inside were unlike anything the Zilani had ever seen. Some walked on land like strange creatures from ancient nightmares. Others floated in metal shells, and a few looked like living crystals. They had studied Kepler 442b with advanced instruments and held long meetings in their massive vessels. Then they had delivered their verdict. "The relocation of your species would require extensive resources," the consortium representative had said. Her name was Administrator Veltar, and she belonged to a species called the Vectron. She looked like a tall, thin tree covered in silver bark. "Your people need specific water conditions, particular atmospheric pressure, and precise temperature ranges. Building suitable habitats for 3.2 million individuals would cost more than the consortium can justify." Kithara had tried to explain that the Zilani had valuable knowledge to offer. They understood ocean currents better than any species in the galaxy. Their bioluminescent communication system was more complex than most alien languages. They had mastered the art of living in harmony with their environment for millennia. "These skills have limited application in modern galactic society," Veltar had replied coldly. "We will preserve samples of your genetic material and cultural records for future study. This is the best outcome we can provide." And then they had left. The mighty Galactic Consortium, with all their advanced technology and vast resources, had written off an entire species because helping them would cost too much. A young messenger swam quickly toward the sacred pool, his lights flashing. Urgent patterns. "Elder, Elder, the Skywatchers have detected something." Kithara felt a flutter of hope in her hearts. "Another consortium ship?" "No, Elder. Something different. Something smaller." The Skywatchers station sat on a floating platform in the middle of the great ocean. When Kithara arrived, she found the technicians gathered around their instruments, their bioluminescent patches glowing with excitement and confusion. "Show me," she commanded. The lead technician, Zethan, activated the viewing screen. The image showed a single vessel moving through space toward their world. It was much smaller than the consortium ships, sleek and white with strange markings. On its hull, "It sent us a message, Elder," Zethan said. In our own language, he played the recording. A voice spoke in accented but clear Zilani. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Endeavor's Dream. We received your distress call. We are coming to help." The room fell silent. After months of being ignored by the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, someone had finally answered their cry for help. "Earth," whispered Merdan. "I have never heard of this species." "Nor have I," Kithara admitted. "But they are coming. That is what matters." The human ship arrived 3 days later. Captain Sarah Chen was unlike any alien the Zilani had ever encountered. She was small compared to most galactic species, with strange fur on the top of her head and skin the color of desert sand. Her eyes were brown and warm, and when she smiled, she showed white teeth. "We're here to help," she said simply as she stood in the specially built water-filled meeting chamber aboard her ship. "Tell us what you need." Cathara studied this strange alien captain. The consortium had sent dozens of officials, all asking about costs and benefits and strategic value. This human asked only how to help. Our world is dying, Cathara explained. Our star grows unstable. The radiation is poisoning our water and heating our atmosphere. We need to evacuate 3.2 million of my people, but we require very specific conditions to survive. Captain Chen listened carefully as Cathara described the Zilani's needs. They required salt water with precise mineral content. The temperature had to stay within a narrow range. The atmospheric pressure needed to be exactly right, or their breathing would fail. That's challenging, Captain Chen admitted. Our ship can maybe take 500 of your people at most, and even then, we'd need to modify our cargo holds extensively. Cathara felt her hope begin to fade. Even these helpful humans could only save a tiny fraction of her people. But, Captain Chen continued, we're not giving up. My crew is already working on solutions, and we're going to call for more help. Over the following days, Cathara watched in amazement as the humans threw themselves into the rescue effort with incredible energy. Dr. James Okafor, their scientist who studied alien life, worked around the clock to understand Zilani biology. Engineer Rosa Martinez began tearing apart sections of their ship to build water-filled chambers. Communications officer Liu Wei sent messages to every human ship in space, asking for assistance. Why are you doing this? Cathara asked Captain Chen during one of their planning sessions. The consortium said we have no strategic value. Helping us gives your people nothing in return. Captain Chen looked puzzled by the question. Does it matter? You need help. We can provide some help. That's enough. But surely your people must consider costs, benefits, practical concerns? Oh, we do, the captain said with a small smile. My superiors back on Earth are probably having fits about the expense and the risk. But that's not really the point, is it? When someone is drowning, you don't stop to ask if saving them will be profitable. You just pull them out of the water. This simple statement amazed Cathara. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy had calculated that saving the Zilani wasn't worth the effort. These humans, who seemed to have far less advanced technology, never even thought to make such calculations. Dr. Okafor made an interesting discovery during his studies of Zilani biology. The bioluminescent organs that allowed them to communicate with light could also process certain types of dangerous radiation. In fact, they could neutralize several forms of cosmic radiation that were deadly to most other species, including humans. This is remarkable, he told Captain Chen. The Zilani aren't just survivors, they're natural radiation processors. They could be incredibly valuable for deep space exploration and hazardous environment cleanup. But when Captain Chen shared this discovery with Cathara, the elder Zilani was disturbed rather than pleased. Now you know we have value to your species, she said sadly. Is that why you will help us? No, Captain Chen said firmly. We're helping you because you need help. What Dr. Okafor discovered is interesting, but it doesn't change anything. Even if you had nothing to offer us, we'd still be here. For the first time in months, Cathara felt something other than despair. These strange humans were unlike any species she had ever encountered. They seemed to operate on principles that made no sense from a practical standpoint, but made perfect sense from the heart. As the days passed and the stellar radiation grew stronger, more human ships began arriving in the system. They came from trade routes, exploration missions, and research stations. None were large or powerful, but each brought supplies and expertise. The humans also did something the consortium had never thought to do. They asked the Zilani what they wanted. Where would you like to go? Captain Chen asked. What kind of world would make you happy? We have heard of a water world in the Tau Ceti system, Cathara said. It has deep oceans and a stable star. But it is far from here, and we know nothing of the politics there. Then that's where we'll take you, Captain Chen said. And don't worry about politics. We'll figure that out later. The rescue preparations continued despite growing problems. Equipment failures plagued the makeshift fleet. Food supplies ran low. The radiation from Kepler 442b's dying star interfered with communications and damaged ship systems, but the humans never gave up. When their technology failed, they improvised. When supplies ran short, they shared what they had. When problems seemed impossible to solve, they found new approaches that no one had thought of before. "Your people are remarkable," Merdan told Captain Chen as they watched human engineers welding new support beams into a cargo hold that would house Zilani refugees. "The consortium has resources we could never dream of, but your small fleet has accomplished more in 2 weeks than they did in 2 months. We're stubborn," Captain Chen admitted. "Sometimes that's a weakness. Sometimes it's exactly what you need." The first transport tests were successful. The human ships could indeed carry Zilani passengers safely, though the accommodations were cramped and basic. More importantly, the Zilani's radiation processing abilities helped protect the human vessels from the increasing stellar radiation. "It's like they were designed to be our partners in this," Dr. Okafor marveled. "They can survive radiation that would kill us, and we can provide mobility they lack. Together we can do things neither species could manage alone." But as the rescue fleet prepared for the massive evacuation effort, troubling news arrived. Long-range sensors detected large ships approaching the system, the distinctive energy signatures of galactic consortium vessels. "They're coming back," Liu Wei reported, multiple battleships moving fast. Captain Chen stared at the sensor readings with grim determination. The consortium had written off the Zilani as worthless. Now that humans were interfering with that decision, the galaxy's most powerful military force was returning. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. 18 hours, maybe 20. Kethara felt cold fear spread through her body. "They will stop the evacuation. They cannot allow your actions to set a precedent. If word spreads that some species will help those the consortium abandons, then every worthless species in the galaxy might start hoping for rescue," Captain Chen finished. "Yeah, we figured. That might be a problem." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All human vessels, this is Chen. Consortium warships are inbound. We have less than 20 hours to get as many Zilani as possible off this world before things get complicated." "Captain," came a voice from the merchant vessel Bright Horizon. "My crew voted. We're staying until every last Zilani is safe, no matter what the consortium brings." Similar messages came from every human ship in the system. No one was leaving. No one was giving up. Kithara watched these incredible aliens prepare to face the galaxy's most powerful military force to protect her people, and she understood something profound. The humans weren't just offering her species transportation to a new world. They were offering something much more valuable and much more dangerous. Hope. "Elder," Merdan asked quietly, "what will we do if the consortium demands we submit to their authority?" Kithara's bioluminescent patches blazed with fierce determination. "We stand with those who stood with us. If the humans are willing to risk everything for us, then we are willing to risk everything for them." The rescue fleet worked through the night, loading Zilani families into every available space. Children clutched bioluminescent toys while their parents tried to comfort them. Elderly Zilani said farewell to their ancient cities beneath the waves. Everyone understood they were witnessing the end of their world and possibly the beginning of something entirely new. As Kepler 442b's sun continued its violent death throes, casting deadly radiation across the system, two very different philosophies prepared to collide. The consortium believed in cold calculation, practical decisions, and acceptable losses. The humans believed in something much simpler and much more dangerous, that every life mattered regardless of cost. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the makeshift command center aboard the Endeavor's Dream, staring at numbers that made no sense. The holographic display showed the harsh reality of their situation. 3.2 million Zilani needed evacuation, and the combined human fleet could transport maybe 50,000 at most. Even working around the clock, they would need months to move everyone. They had days at best. "The stellar radiation is increasing faster than predicted," Dr. Okafor reported, his voice tight. "With worry, if the pattern continues, the southern continents will be uninhabitable within a week." Engineer Rosa Martinez wiped sweat from her forehead as she climbed out of a partially flooded cargo hold. "I've got 3 more chambers ready for Zilani. Passengers, but the life support systems are already running at 120% capacity. We push them any harder, and we risk losing everything. Chen nodded grimly. Every human ship in the rescue fleet faced the same problem. They were brave and determined, but they simply didn't have enough resources to save everyone. "Captain," Communications Officer Liu Wei called out. "I'm receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Priority Alpha encryption." Chen's heart sank. She had been dreading this moment. "Put it through to my cabin, privately." Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on her personal communication screen minutes later. His expression was stern, and Chen could see other high-ranking officials in the background. "Captain Chen, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Sir, we responded to a distress call from a species the Galactic Consortium has already evaluated and dismissed," Harrison interrupted. "Do you have any idea what kind of diplomatic nightmare you're creating? The Consortium has filed formal complaints about human interference in their decisions." Chen felt anger building in her chest. "Sir, we're talking about 3.2 million lives. People who will die if we don't help them. People who are not our responsibility," Admiral Harrison replied coldly. "Chen, you're a good officer, but you're thinking with your heart instead of your head. Humanity has spent decades building relationships with the Consortium. We can't throw that away for one dying species." "What if it were Earth?" Chen asked, quietly. "What if it were humans the Consortium decided weren't worth saving?" Harrison's face softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. "That's not the situation we're dealing with. Your orders are simple, Captain. Collect whatever scientific data you can about the Zilani, then withdraw immediately. The Consortium is sending ships to manage the situation. And if I refuse, then you'll be relieved of command and court-martialed when you return to Earth." "If you return to Earth," Harrison leaned forward. "Sarah, be smart about this. Don't destroy your career over aliens you've known for a few days." The connection ended, leaving Chen alone with an impossible choice. Follow orders and abandon the Zilani to die, or defy Earth Command and lose everything she had worked for her entire life. She found her senior officers gathered in the main briefing room an hour later. Word had already spread through the ship about Earth's position. "So what are we doing, Captain?" Martinez asked bluntly. Chen looked around the table at faces she had served with for 3 years. Dr. Okafor, the scientist who had given up a comfortable research position to explore the unknown. Martinez, the engineer who could fix anything, with spare parts and determination. Liu Wei, the communications specialist who spoke 7 languages and still struggled with small talk. Lieutenant Commander James Park, her first officer, who had turned down promotion twice to stay with this crew. "Earth Command wants us to abandon the Zilani," she said simply. "They're concerned about diplomatic relationships with the Consortium." "And what do you want to do?" Park asked. "I want to save every Zilani life we can. But that means defying direct orders. It means ending all of our careers. It probably means we'll never see Earth again." The room fell silent. Chen waited, knowing she couldn't make this decision alone. Whatever they chose, they would all have to live with the consequences. Dr. Okafor spoke first. "I've been studying the Zilani bioluminescent communication system. It's the most complex natural language I've ever encountered. They can express concepts that most species need paragraphs to describe with simple light patterns. Losing that knowledge would be a tragedy." "It's not about the knowledge," Martinez said quietly. "I've got 3 kids back on Earth. Little Maria just started school. But if I go home and tell them I left people to die because it was inconvenient to save them, what kind of father does that make me?" Liu Wei nodded. "I joined the exploration. Service to find new life and learn about different species. Doesn't matter much if I let the first species that needs real help just die." Park straightened in his chair. "Captain, I've served with you long enough to know you've already made up your mind. The question is whether we're going to follow you, or not." He looked around the table. "All in favor of staying and helping the Zilani regardless of orders." Every hand went up. Chen felt tears in her eyes. "You all understand what this means? We're probably never going home. We're defying Earth Command and the Galactic Consortium. will be branded as renegades. Better to be renegades with clear consciences than heroes with blood on our hands, Dr. Okafor said simply. Within hours, similar votes were taking place on every human ship in the system. The results were the same across the fleet. Unanimous decisions to stay and help regardless of the cost. Captain Chen broadcast the fleet's decision to Earth Command and the approaching consortium vessels. This is the human rescue fleet. We are remaining in the Kepler 442b system to provide humanitarian assistance to the Zilani people. We do not recognize any authority to abandon sentient beings to preventable death. We will defend our right to offer aid by any means necessary. The response from the consortium came quickly. Admiral Zektar of the Drakmor species, commanding the battleship Hegemony, sent a simple message. Human vessels will withdraw immediately or face military action. The consortium's decision regarding the Zilani is final. Elder Cathara was present in the command center when the message arrived. Her bioluminescent patterns showed amazement and fear mixed together. You would fight the entire galactic consortium for us? She asked in wonder. We're not looking for a fight, Chen replied. But we're not backing down either. Dr. Okafor had continued his research into Zilani biology despite the growing crisis. His latest discovery was remarkable. The Zilani's radiation processing abilities weren't just defensive. They could actually absorb harmful cosmic radiation and convert it into useful energy. Look at this, he said, showing Chen readings from the past week. Every human ship in the system has seen improved efficiency in areas where Zilani passengers are housed. They're literally making our ships run better just by being aboard. More than that, Martinez added, they've been helping with repairs. Somehow they can sense structural weaknesses in metal that our instruments miss. They've prevented 3 potential hull breaches in the past 2 days. Chen realized the implications immediately. They're not just refugees we're rescuing. They're partners. They have abilities that complement our technology perfectly. This discovery led to a breakthrough in the evacuation planning. Instead of trying to cram as many Zilani as possible into minimal space, the humans began integrating them into ship operations. Zilani passengers helped navigate through radiation storms, assisted with repairs, and even improved communication between ships through their bioluminescent signals. It's like they were designed to work with us, Liu Wei marveled as he watched Zilani children playing in the ship's corridors, their light patterns creating beautiful displays that somehow improved crew morale. But the most important development came from an unexpected source. Elder Cathara requested a private meeting with Captain Chen 3 days before the consortium fleet was due to arrive. I have been in contact with other species, she said without preamble. Chen looked puzzled. Other species? I thought you said no one answered your distress calls. No one answered our calls for help with evacuation, Cathara corrected. But many answered calls for information. Once word spread that humans were actually helping a species the consortium had written off, others became interested. She activated a communication device Chen had never seen before. The holographic display showed dozens of different alien species, all participating in some kind of conference call. Captain Chen, Cathara said formally, allow me to introduce you to the Forgotten. The beings on the display were unlike anything in consortium records. Some appeared to be made of living crystal. Others looked like giant flowers with technological implants. A few seemed to exist as pure energy contained in mechanical bodies. We are species the consortium has deemed economically non-viable, strategically worthless, or evolutionarily obsolete, explained a crystal being whose voice sounded like wind chimes. Some of us were refused membership, others were expelled. When we became inconvenient, all of us have been written off as failures. But you survived, Chen said. We survive by helping each other, replied a flower-like creature. When the consortium abandons a species, we try to offer assistance. Usually, it is not enough. We lack the resources for major rescue operations. This time is different, said the crystal being. This time someone else started the rescue. Someone with ships and technology and, most importantly, the will to act. Chen began to understand. You want to help with the Zilani evacuation? We want to help with more than that, the flower creature said. Word is spreading throughout the galaxy that a species called humans is standing up to the consortium, that they refuse to let people die for economic convenience. Species that have been hiding in fear are beginning to hope. Over the following days, ships began arriving in the Kepler 442b system from across the galaxy. They were unlike anything Chen had ever seen. Crystalline vessels that seemed to grow rather than being built, organic ships that pulsed like living, hearts and energy-based craft that looked like captured stars. The Vorthan arrived first. Their crystal ships were fragile but incredibly fast, and they had sensor technology that put consortium equipment to shame. They had been rejected by the consortium as too fragile for military service and too slow for commercial use. The Ashanti came next, their biomechanical vessels resembling giant insects. They were nomadic traders who had been expelled from consortium space for disrupting established commercial networks by offering better prices and service than consortium corporations. The Mycelians appeared last, their living ships growing into the system like spaceborne forests. They were plant-based beings who thought in centuries rather than years, dismissed by the consortium as incapable of adapting to modern pace of change. Each species brought unique capabilities. The Vorthan could navigate through radiation storms that would blind other sensors. The Ashanti had incredibly efficient transportation technology adapted for moving large populations quickly. The Mycelians offered medical facilities that could treat injuries and illnesses that no other species understood. "This is incredible," Dr. Okafor told Chen as they watched the growing fleet of unusual vessels. Each species has abilities the consortium dismissed as worthless, but together, they're more capable than any consortium fleet I've ever seen. Captain Chen found herself commanding not just a rescue mission, but a revolution. Species that had been scattered across the galaxy by consortium policies were coming together for the first time. They shared technology, resources, and most importantly, hope. "The consortium is going to see this as more than just interference," Lieutenant Commander Park warned. "They're going to see it as an existential threat. If word spreads that their rejects are successfully working together, then every species they've ever written off might start demanding better treatment," Chen finished. "Yeah, I figured that out too." Elder Cathara watched the preparations with amazement. "You have created something beautiful here, Captain Chen, but also something very dangerous." "Sometimes those are the same thing," Chen replied. The evacuation accelerated dramatically with the new arrivals. Vorthan sensors identified safe passage routes through the intensifying radiation. Ashanti transport pods moved Zelani families efficiently between ships. Mycelian bioships provided healing sanctuaries for those suffering from radiation exposure. But most importantly, the Zelani were no longer just refugees being rescued. They had become active participants in their own salvation, using their unique abilities to help coordinate the massive operation. "We need to move faster," Dr. Okafor reported urgently. "The stellar activity is accelerating. Our latest models show the star could go supernova weeks earlier than predicted." Chen nodded grimly. They had managed to evacuate nearly 800,000 Zelani in the past week, but that left more than 2 million still in danger. And now the consortium fleet was only 2 days away. "Captain," Liu Wei called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the lead consortium vessel. Admiral Zektar wants to speak with you directly." The Drakmor Admiral appeared on the main screen, a tall reptilian being covered in natural armor plating. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their military prowess and absolute loyalty to consortium authority. "Captain Chen," he said in perfect, emotionless English, "you are harboring illegal aliens and interfering with consortium policy. You have assembled a fleet of rejected species in direct violation of galactic security protocols. Surrender immediately, and your crews will be treated leniently." Chen stepped forward. "Admiral Zektar, we are conducting humanitarian rescue operations for a sentient species facing extinction. We have committed no crimes except refusing to let people die. The Zelani were properly evaluated by consortium authorities and found to be non-viable for relocation assistance. Your interference sets a dangerous precedent that threatens galactic stability. The only thing threatening galactic stability is a system that writes off entire species because helping them costs too much, Chen replied. Admiral Zektar's reptilian features showed no emotion. You have 24 hours to disperse this illegal gathering and withdraw from the system. After that, we will enforce consortium authority by any means necessary. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Well, Martinez said finally, at least now we know where we stand. Chen looked around at her mixed human-alien crew. They had started this mission with a simple goal, save as many lives as possible. Now they faced the most powerful military force in the galaxy, commanding a fleet of species the universe had forgotten. All ships, she announced over the fleet-wide channel. This is Captain Chen. The consortium has given us an ultimatum. Abandon the Zilani or fight. I want every captain to put it to a vote with their crew. This isn't just about rescue anymore. This is about whether the strong have the right to decide who lives and who dies. The responses came back within hours. Not a single ship voted to withdraw. The forgotten were no longer willing to be forgotten. And the humans who had started it all were ready to stand with their new allies against impossible odds. Elder Kithara's bioluminescent patterns blazed with fierce pride as she made an announcement to every Zilani on every ship. For 50,000 years, we have lived in peace beneath our oceans. We have never known war, never raised weapons against other beings. But those who stand with us in our darkest hour have shown us a new way to be strong. Tomorrow we do not hide. Tomorrow we fight for our right to exist. The stage was set. In less than 24 hours, a ragtag fleet of humans and galactic rejects would face the might of the consortium military. The battle would determine not just the fate of the Zilani, but whether compassion or calculation would define the future of the galaxy. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of the hegemony, studying the sensor readings with growing confusion. The reports from his scouts made no sense. Instead of the small human fleet they had expected to find, the Kepler 442b system was filled with dozens of vessels from species that shouldn't exist. Confirm these readings, he ordered his sensor officer. Confirmed, Admiral. We have identified Vorthon crystal ships, Ashanti biomechanicals, mycelian growth vessels, and at least 6 other species classified as extinct or expelled from consortium space. Zektar's clawed hands gripped the command rail tighter. In his 40 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. The species filling the system were failures, evolutionary dead ends, economic disasters, strategic liabilities that the consortium had rightfully abandoned. They should have died out quietly in the dark corners of space, not gathered together in some impossible alliance. How many ships total? He asked. Over 200, sir, and more are arriving every few hours. The Drakmor Admiral felt something he rarely experienced: uncertainty. His battle group consisted of 12 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, crewed by elite consortium forces. On paper, they could destroy the entire enemy fleet without significant losses. But something about the situation felt wrong. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the Allied fleet. They're not military communications. They appear to be civilian coordination frequencies. Medical updates, supply distributions, evacuation, progress reports. They're still trying to rescue the Zilani? Zektar asked in amazement. Yes, sir. Even with our fleet bearing down on them, they're continuing evacuation operations. Zektar tried to understand the tactical thinking behind such a decision. Any competent military commander would have abandoned the rescue operation to focus on defensive preparations. These aliens were either completely incompetent or operating under principles he couldn't comprehend. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Endeavor's Dream Command Center, watching the consortium battle fleet take positions around the system. The enemy ships were beautiful and terrifying, sleek vessels bristling with advanced weapons, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that could deflect anything the human fleet might throw at them. They're not moving to attack positions, Lieutenant, Commander Park observed. They're forming a blockade. Dr. Okafor looked up from his analysis station. They want to contain us. If we can't leave the system, they can take their time destroying us or forcing surrender. How many Zelani are still on the planet? Chen asked. About 1.8 million, Engineer Martinez replied. We've been moving them faster than ever, but the radiation levels are making surface operations more dangerous every hour. Chen nodded grimly. Even if they worked without stopping, they needed at least another week to evacuate everyone. The consortium clearly wasn't going to give them that long. Captain, Liu Wei called out. I'm receiving a transmission from one of the Vorthon crystal ships. Captain Synthara wants to speak with you. The holographic display showed a being that looked like a living diamond, her crystalline structure refracting light into beautiful rainbow patterns. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music. Captain Chen, my sensors have analyzed the consortium fleet. Their ships are powerful, but they have a weakness. What kind of weakness? Chen asked hopefully. Their energy shields are designed to deflect concentrated attacks from similar technology. But our species use very different approaches to warfare. Fourth-hand crystal resonance, Ashanti bioelectric pulses, mycelium spore clouds. None of these work the way consortium weapons do. Park leaned forward with interest. You're saying their shields might not be effective against unconventional attacks? More than that, Synthara replied. Consortium battle doctrine assumes they're fighting enemies with similar capabilities and strategies. They've never faced a combined force of species they consider primitive or obsolete. A new voice joined the conversation as Captain Morden of the Ashanti vessel Swarm Dancer appeared on the display. The insectoid being clicked his mandibles in what Chen had learned was their equivalent of laughter. The Great Consortium believes we were expelled for being disruptive to commerce, he said. What they never understood was that we were disruptive, because we found better ways to do everything. Our ships, our weapons, our tactics, all superior to theirs but different enough that they couldn't comprehend the advantages. Elder Cathara entered the command center, her bioluminescent patterns glowing with determination. Captain Chen, I bring word from my people. The final transport shuttles are loading now. We will have everyone off the surface within 6 hours. That's cutting it close, Chen said. The consortium fleet will find us ready, interrupted Captain Felthara of the mycelium bioship Growing Light. The plant being's voice was slow and deep like wind through ancient forests. My species thinks in centuries, not moments. We have been preparing for this confrontation since the consortium first rejected us 80 years ago. Chen looked around at the diverse group of beings who had somehow become her allies. Each species brought unique capabilities that the consortium had dismissed as worthless. Together, they might actually have a chance. All right, she said. Let's coordinate our defense. But remember, our primary goal is still protecting the evacuation. We're not trying to win a war here, we just need to buy time. The battle began at dawn on Kepler 442b. Though the concept of dawn had little meaning on a world whose star was dying in violent bursts of radiation. Admiral Zektar opened with a standard consortium intimidation tactic, a massive display of firepower aimed at empty space, designed to demonstrate his fleet's overwhelming superiority. Brilliant energy beams lit up the darkness between the stars, and the explosions could be seen from the planet's surface. Attention all vessels, he broadcasted on all frequencies. You have witnessed a fraction of our military capability. Surrender now, and civilian casualties will be minimized. The response came not from Captain Chen but from Elder Kethera, speaking for all the assembled species. Admiral Zektar of the consortium, we are not your enemies. We are simply people who refuse to let other people die when we can prevent it. If you choose to attack us for this, the responsibility for whatever follows rests with you. Zektar had expected defiance, fear, or perhaps desperate negotiations. This calm acceptance of moral responsibility was completely outside his experience with conquered species. Begin the attack, he ordered. The consortium fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons targeting the largest enemy vessels. Energy beams and missile salvos streaked across space toward their intended targets. And then something impossible happened. The Vorthon crystal ships began to sing. It started as a low harmonic resonance that grew stronger as more crystal vessels joined in. The sound couldn't travel through space, but the vibrations created interference patterns in the electromagnetic spectrum. The consortium's energy weapons, designed to maintain perfect coherence over vast distances, began to scatter and lose focus. "What is that?" Zektar demanded as his carefully aimed shots went wide. "Some kind of electromagnetic disruption field," his science officer reported. "Their crystal structures are creating harmonic interference with our targeting systems." Before the consortium forces could adapt, the Ashanti ship struck from an unexpected angle. Their bioelectric weapons didn't fire energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, they released clouds of charged particles that behaved like living creatures, swarming around enemy ships and seeking out vulnerable systems. Consortium shields flickered and failed as the bioelectric swarms found ways through defenses that had never been designed to stop such attacks. Emergency alarms blared across the battle fleet as ship after ship reported system failures. "Impossible," Zektar muttered. "These are primitive species. They shouldn't have weapons that can penetrate our shields." The Mycelian ships attacked. Last, and their assault was the strangest of all. Clouds of what looked like space pollen drifted toward the consortium vessels, seeming harmless and slow. But when the spores made contact with enemy hulls, they began to grow, spreading across, armor plating like fast-moving rust. "Sir, the organic material is eating through our hull," reported the captain of the destroyer Relentless. "It's some kind of metal-consuming organism." Chen watched the battle from her command center in amazement. The species the consortium had written off as failures were systematically dismantling the most advanced military fleet in the galaxy, using tactics no one had ever seen before. But the fight was far from over. Zektar's forces began adapting to the unconventional attacks, adjusting their shield frequencies and weapon targeting systems. The consortium's technological superiority was still overwhelming, and they had the advantage of numbers. "Captain," Dr. Okafor called out urgently, "Zalani transport ship Morning Tide is under attack. A consortium fighter squadron broke through our lines." On the main screen, Chen watched in horror as small, fast consortium fighters pursued a lumbering transport filled with Zalani refugees. The transport's shields were failing under repeated hits and its engines were damaged. Thousands of innocent lives hung in the balance. "All ships, protect the transports," she ordered. But the nearest Allied vessels were minutes away. That's when the Zalani themselves entered the battle. Elder Cathara had been coordinating the evacuation from a command ship in orbit around the dying planet. As she watched the fighters closing in on the defenseless transport, she made a decision that would change everything. "All Zalani vessels," she broadcast on the bioluminescent communication network. "Remember what these strangers have done for us. They stood with us when we had no hope. Now we stand with them." The Zalani didn't have warships or advanced weapons. What they had were hundreds of small vessels, research craft, cargo haulers, maintenance pods, scattered throughout the system. And they had abilities the consortium had never encountered. Every Zalani ship in the system suddenly blazed with bioluminescent light. But this wasn't communication or celebration. The light was focused, concentrated, turned into a weapon no one had expected. The consortium fighters found themselves flying blind as intense bioluminescent flares overwhelmed their sensors. Their targeting systems, designed to track conventional energy signatures, couldn't cope with the organic light show surrounding them. "I can't see anything," one pilot reported frantically. "The entire electromagnetic spectrum is flooded with interference." But the Zalani could see perfectly. Their bioluminescent communication system let them coordinate with precision that electronic systems couldn't match. Small Zalani craft swarmed around the confused fighters like schools of fish around sharks, using their superior maneuverability to ram damaged fighters or interfere with their flight paths. Admiral Zektar watched his supposedly easy victory dissolving into chaos. His advanced weapons were being countered by singing crystals. His impenetrable shields were failing against biological attacks. His elite pilots were being outmaneuvered by refugee civilians using abilities he didn't even understand. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're losing ships." The enemy fleet it's like nothing in our databases. Every species is using completely different technology, and our systems can't adapt fast enough to counter them all. For the first time in his military career, Zektar considered retreat, but the implications of failure were too serious. If word spread that the consortium military had been defeated by a collection of galactic rejects, it would encourage rebellion throughout their territory. "Prepare the Nova Lance," he ordered grimly. His officers looked shocked. The Nova Lance was a planet-killer weapon designed to destroy entire worlds. Using it against a refugee fleet was a war crime of unimaginable proportions. "Sir, there are millions of civilians in the system. There are also rebels and terrorists who threaten the stability of galactic civilization," Zektar replied coldly. "Document this as a necessary action to prevent the spread of anti-consortium insurgency." Captain Chen's worst fears were realized when her sensors detected the massive energy buildup aboard the Hegemony. "They're charging a planet-killer weapon," she announced to the fleet. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern. Try to get as many transports clear as possible." But Elder Kethera had a different idea. "No," she said firmly. "We do not run. We do not hide. We show them that some things cannot be destroyed by superior firepower." What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Every Zelani in the system, civilians, refugees, children, elders, linked their bioluminescent abilities into a single network. The combined light of 3.2 million beings created a phenomenon that had never been seen before, a living aurora that stretched across space itself. The bioluminescent field didn't stop the Nova Lance. No organic light could block a weapon designed to destroy planets. But it did something more important. It revealed the moral cost of what the consortium was about to do. The aurora made everything visible. Every refugee ship, every rescue vessel, every civilian transport trying to escape the dying world. The light show was being broadcast on subspace frequencies throughout the galaxy, showing the universe exactly what the consortium was willing to do to maintain their authority. "Admiral," Zektar's communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving messages from consortium member worlds. They're asking us to stop." "What?" "The bioluminescent broadcast is reaching every major population center in consortium space. Billions of people are watching us prepare to destroy a rescue fleet. Sir, some of our own member species are calling this genocide." Zektar stared at the magnificent display of light surrounding his fleet. He had come here to crush a minor rebellion, and had instead created the greatest public relations disaster in consortium history. The Nova Lance powered down. "All ships," he ordered reluctantly, "cease fire and withdraw to minimum safe distance. We'll reassess the situation." Captain Chen couldn't believe what she was seeing. The mighty consortium fleet, the most feared military force in the galaxy, was retreating from a battle they could have easily won. "They're leaving?" Dr. Okafor asked, in amazement. "Not leaving," Elder Kethera corrected, her bioluminescent patterns showing complex emotions. "But they are not attacking either. They cannot destroy us without revealing their true nature to the entire galaxy." The standoff continued for 3 more days, as the last Zelani transports lifted off from their dying world. The consortium fleet held position at the edge of the system, neither attacking nor withdrawing, while billions of galactic citizens watched the rescue operation unfold. On the 3rd day, Kepler 442b's star finally died. The supernova lit up space for light years, in every direction, but by then every Zelani was safely aboard the refugee fleet. 3.2 million lives had been saved by species the galaxy had written off as failures. Admiral Zektar received new orders as the rescue fleet prepared to leave the system. Allow them to depart, but monitor their movements. The consortium's leadership had decided that martyring the refugees would cause more problems than letting them go, but they had underestimated what they had already lost. The bioluminescent broadcast of the rescue operation had inspired species throughout the galaxy. The forgotten were no longer content to hide in the shadows, and the rest of the universe had seen that even the mighty consortium could be forced to back down when confronted with moral courage. As the combined fleet of humans and their allies prepared to jump to hyperspace, Captain Chen realized they had started something that could never be stopped. They had set out to save one species and had instead planted the seeds of galactic revolution. Elder Cathara joined her in the command center as they watched Kepler 442b's death throes through the rear sensors. "Your people have a saying," the Elder Zilani said, "about standing with others in dark times." "With you always," Chen replied. "Yes. But I think the meaning is larger than you intended. You stood with us when we had nothing to offer. Now every species in the galaxy knows that someone will stand with them too. The darkness that has covered so many worlds is beginning to lift." Chen smiled as the fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying 3.2 million Zilani toward their new home, and carrying hope toward every corner of the galaxy. Behind them, the consortium fleet was left to explain to their leadership how they had lost a battle without firing a shot, defeated not by superior weapons, but by something far more dangerous: the simple belief that every life mattered. 3 months after the escape from Kepler 442b, the refugee fleet reached the Tau Ceti system. What they found there changed everything. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Endeavor's Dream, staring at the sensor readings in disbelief. The system wasn't empty as their long-range scans had suggested. It was occupied by a massive consortium military installation, complete with orbital defense platforms, supply depots, and a fleet of warships that dwarfed what they had faced at the Dying Star. "How did we miss this?" Lieutenant Commander Park asked, studying the tactical display. "They must have built it recently," Dr. Okafor replied. "The installation is still under construction. They're preparing for something big." Elder Cathara floated in her specialized tank in the command center, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with worry. "They knew we would come here. This is a trap." Admiral Zektar had indeed been busy since his failure at Kepler 442b. The humiliation of being forced to retreat from a battle he could have won had cost him his position, but his replacement, Admiral Vexhan, was even more ruthless. The new Drakmor commander had spent months preparing for the refugees' arrival. "Attention, human vessels," Vexhan's voice crackled across all frequencies. "You are entering restricted consortium space with illegal aliens and stolen technology. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Chen looked around at her mixed crew of humans and allies. The past months had forged them into something more than a rescue fleet. They had become a family, bound together by shared purpose and mutual respect. "What do you think?" she asked the group. Captain Senthara of the Vorthon crystal ship Harmony's Edge appeared on the communication screen. "My people have analyzed their defenses. This installation was built specifically to counter our abilities. They have studied recordings of our previous battle and designed countermeasures. The same is true for us," added Captain Morden of the Ashanti vessel Swarm Dancer. "Their new shields can adapt to bioelectric attacks. Their weapons have been modified to disrupt our flight patterns." Chen felt a cold weight in her stomach. The consortium had learned from their defeat and prepared accordingly. This time there would be no surprise tactics or unconventional weapons to level the playing field. "Captain," Dr. Okafor said quietly, "we're outnumbered at least 5-1. Their technology has been specifically upgraded to counter our capabilities. From a tactical standpoint, this is unwinnable." Chen nodded grimly. "But we're not leaving the Zilani here to be captured or killed." "There may be another option," Elder Cathara said. Her bioluminescent patterns showed complex emotions: fear, determination, and something else Chen couldn't identify. "What do you mean?" "The consortium believes they understand our capabilities based on what they observed at Kepler 442b. But they do not understand what my people have learned from working with your species and our other allies." Over the following hours, as the refugee fleet held position at the edge of the system while the consortium forces prepared their attack, Elder Cathara explained what the Zilani had discovered. Living and working alongside humans and the other rejected species had changed them. Their bioluminescent abilities had always been powerful, but isolation had limited their potential. Now connected to technology and minds they had never imagined, they were evolving rapidly. "We can do more than create light patterns," Kithara explained to the assembled fleet commanders. We can interface directly with your computer systems, enhance your weapons, strengthen your shields, but it will require complete trust between our species. Captain Velthara of the mycelian bioship Growing Light leaned forward with interest. You're proposing a true symbiosis, not just cooperation but integration. The risks are enormous, warned Captain Synthara. If the integration fails during combat, we could lose ships, crews, everything. Chen considered the proposal. They were facing impossible odds against an enemy that had prepared specifically to defeat them. Conventional tactics would lead to certain destruction. But this was something the consortium could never have anticipated. How long would you need to establish the connections? She asked. 6 hours for basic integration, Kithara replied. 12 for full symbiotic bonding. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the overwhelming consortium forces. We don't have 12 hours. They'll attack long before then. Then we do what humans do best, Engineer Martinez said with a grin. We improvise under pressure. The next few hours saw the most remarkable transformation in galactic military history. Zelani technicians worked alongside human engineers, Vorthon scientists, Ashanti pilots, and mycelian healers to create something entirely new. Hybrid vessels that combined the best abilities of multiple species. Zelani bioluminescent networks were integrated into human computer systems, creating ships that could think and react with organic intuition. Vorthon crystal resonance technology was combined with Ashanti bioelectric systems and mycelian organic growth patterns to create weapons that defied conventional physics. But the most important change was in the crews themselves. Humans found their reflexes sharpened by Zelani neural interfaces. Zelani discovered their bioluminescent abilities amplified by human determination. The other species experienced similar enhancements, as if proximity to humanity somehow made everyone more than they had been before. It's remarkable, Dr. Okafor observed as he watched a mixed crew of humans and Zelani working in perfect synchronization. Your species seems to bring out the best in everyone around you. The consortium was wrong about all of us, but they were especially wrong about humans. Admiral Vexhan grew impatient as the refugee fleet's preparations continued. His orders were clear. Destroy the illegal gathering and capture any survivors for interrogation. But something about the enemy fleet's behavior disturbed him. They're not running, his tactical officer reported. Standard doctrine for outgunned civilian vessels is to scatter and hope some ships escape. These ships are staying together and apparently preparing to fight. Good. Vexhan replied coldly. It will make destroying them easier. But when the consortium attack began, nothing went as planned. The first wave of missiles, designed to overwhelm the refugee fleet's limited defensive capabilities, encountered something unprecedented. The Zelani-enhanced ships moved like living creatures, dodging attacks with organic grace while their hybrid weapon systems struck back with precision that no computer could achieve. Human tactical doctrine, enhanced by Zelani bioluminescent communication networks, allowed the refugee fleet to coordinate their movements with impossible speed and accuracy. Ships that should have been destroyed by superior firepower instead danced between enemy attacks like schools of fish evading predators. Status report, Vexhan demanded, as his supposedly easy victory turned into chaos. Sir, their capabilities have increased exponentially since Kepler 442b. They're using some kind of organic technological hybrid system that our analysts can't classify. On the Endeavor's Dream, Captain Chen felt the ship respond to her thoughts as if it were an extension of her own body. The Zelani integration had created a connection between captain and vessel that was both startling and natural. All ships, she broadcast on the hybrid communication network that combined human radio with Zelani bioluminescence. Remember why we're here. We're not trying to win a war. We're protecting our family. The word family resonated through every ship in the refugee fleet. Humans who had given up their careers to save strangers. Zelani who had been rescued from extinction. Vorthon, Ashanti, mycelians, and dozens of other species who had found acceptance and purpose among the galactic rejects. They fought not as separate species allied by convenience, but as one people defending their home. The battle raged for hours. The consortium forces had every advantage. Superior numbers, better weapons, stronger shields, tactical positions. But they were fighting an enemy that operated outside every paradigm they understood. Ships that should have been destroyed continued, fighting with mycelial organic repair systems constantly rebuilding damaged sections. Weapons that should have missed their target struck with Zilani-enhanced accuracy. Defensive formations that should have collapsed held together through human stubbornness and alien innovation. "This is impossible," Admiral Vexhan muttered as he watched his fleet take casualties while the refugee vessels seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. They're using technology that doesn't exist. What he didn't understand was that they weren't using technology at all, not in any way. The consortium recognized. They were using something far more powerful. The willingness of different species to trust each other completely, to share their greatest strengths and accept help with their greatest weaknesses. The turning point came when the consortium deployment, a weapon they had been saving, a massive energy cannon designed to destroy multiple ships with a single shot. The weapon charged up slowly but generated enough power to vaporize anything in its path. Captain Chen saw the energy build up on her sensors and knew there was no way to avoid the attack. The weapon was too powerful, the targeting too precise. At least 50 refugee ships would be destroyed in a single devastating blow. "All ships in the target zone," she broadcast. "Emergency scatter pattern. Try to minimize casualties." But Elder Cathara had a different plan. Was greater than the sum of its parts. The energy beam held against the bioluminescent shield for long moments, creating a spectacular display of light and power that could be seen throughout the system. Then, slowly, the beam began to bend, redirected by the living shield back toward its source. The consortium flagship Dominion barely had time to raise emergency shields before its own weapon struck it. The massive dreadnought, designed to be invulnerable to any attack, was crippled by the reflection of its own power. Admiral Vexhan found himself in command of a damaged flagship, facing an enemy that had just demonstrated the ability to turn his most powerful weapons against him. For the first time in his military career, he felt something approaching fear. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet. It's from a human captain." Captain Chen's image appeared on the Dominion's main screen. She looked tired but determined, and behind her, Vexhan could see crew members from multiple species working together in perfect harmony. "Admiral Vexhan," she said calmly, "you came here to destroy us because we refuse to let people die. You've seen what we're capable of when we work together. You can continue this fight and lose more ships, or you can let us pass peacefully to establish our colony." "You think you can threaten the consortium?" Vexhan replied angrily. "We're not threatening anyone," Chen said. "We're just showing you that there's a different way to do things. Your people rule through fear and force. We've learned to lead through hope and cooperation. Which approach do you think will last longer?" Before Vexhan could respond, his communications officer interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving messages from throughout consortium space. The battle is being broadcast on subspace networks. Civilian populations on dozens of worlds they're demanding that we cease hostilities." Vexhan stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The refugee fleet wasn't just winning the battle. They were winning the hearts and minds of the galaxy. Every species that watched the broadcast saw the same thing. A group of rejected people standing together against impossible odds, protecting each other through cooperation rather than domination. "Admiral," Chen continued, "your own people are telling you to stop. How long can you maintain authority through force when your citizens would rather follow our example?" The Admiral looked around his bridge at officers who were no longer meeting his gaze. The consortium's strength had always been based on the belief that they were superior to other species, that their way was the only way that worked. But the refugee fleet had proven that wrong in the most public way possible. "All ships," Vexhan ordered reluctantly, "cease fire and withdraw to holding positions." The battle was over. The refugee fleet had not only survived, but had dealt a devastating blow to the consortium's reputation. More importantly, they had proven that different species could work together as equals, creating something stronger than any single civilization. As the smoke cleared and the damaged consortium fleet retreated, Captain Chen found herself looking at a system that was now theirs. The massive military installation would provide resources and facilities for establishing the new colony. "What do we call it?" Elder Kethara asked, as they watched the first Zilani families preparing to descend to the water world that would be their new home. Chen smiled as she watched children from a dozen different species playing together in the ship's corridors, their different forms of communication creating a beautiful symphony of light, sound, and motion. "We call it Haven," she said, "a place where anyone can find safety regardless of who they are or where they came from." The establishment of Haven marked the beginning of a new era. Word spread quickly through the galaxy that there was now a place where rejected species were welcome, where cooperation mattered more than competition, and where the strong protected the weak rather than exploiting them. Ships began arriving within days, refugees from consortium territory, explorers seeking new opportunities, scientists wanting to study the unprecedented cooperation between species. What had started as a rescue mission was becoming the foundation of an entirely new kind of civilization. Elder Kethara stood with Captain Chen on the observation deck of the orbital station they had captured and converted into a welcoming center for new arrivals. Below them, the blue oceans of the world that would house the Zilani colonies sparkled in the light of a stable star. "Your species has done something remarkable," Kethara said. "You have shown the galaxy that strength comes not from dominating others but from standing with them." Chen nodded, watching a group of human and Zilani engineers working together to establish the first underwater city. "We didn't set out to start a revolution. We just didn't want to let you die." "Sometimes," the elder Zilani replied, "the most important changes begin with the simplest decisions. You decided that lives mattered more than politics. That choice has already changed the fate of millions of beings." As if to emphasize her point, the communication system announced the arrival of another refugee fleet, this one carrying survivors from 3 different species that the consortium had recently written off as economically non-viable. Captain Chen smiled and headed toward the docking bay to welcome the new arrivals. Each ship that arrived brought not just more refugees, but more evidence that the galaxy was ready for a different way of thinking about civilization. The consortium's greatest fear was already coming true. Hope was spreading faster than they could contain it. 2 years after the Battle of Tau Ceti, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Grand Council chamber of Haven Station, watching representatives from over 300 species debate the future of the galaxy. The chamber itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Vorthon crystal formations provided perfect acoustics. Mycelian organic architecture created a living ceiling that filtered light and air, while human engineering and Zilani bioluminescent networks allowed beings with completely different communication methods to understand each other perfectly. Chen still found it hard to believe how much had changed. What had started as a desperate rescue mission had become the Coalition of Haven, a growing alliance that now controlled over 50 star systems and welcomed any species seeking a better way of life. The latest intelligence reports confirm it, Dr. Okafor said as he joined Chen at the observation platform. 17 more consortium member worlds have formally applied for coalition membership in the past month. Their own citizens are demanding the right to join us. Chen nodded, watching Elder Kethara address the assembly below. The elderly Zilani had become the coalition's director of interspecies relations, and her words carried weight with beings from across the galaxy. "My friends," Kethara was saying, her bioluminescent patterns translating instantly into dozens of languages, "we gather today not as conquerors or liberators, but as proof that different peoples can choose to stand together. Each world that joins us does so freely, seeking the same things we all sought: dignity, respect, and the right to live without fear." The applause that followed came in many forms: clapping hands, harmonic tones, light patterns, chemical releases that created colorful clouds in the air. Each species expressed approval in their own way, yet the message was universal. Captain Velthara of the Mycelians rose to speak next. Her slow, deep voice commanded attention as she addressed the Assembly's most pressing concern. The Consortium has issued another ultimatum. They demand we cease accepting new member species and return all stolen territory to their control. They give us 30 standard days to comply, or they will launch what they call a final solution to the coalition. Problem? Worried murmurs rippled through the chamber. Everyone knew what that meant. The consortium was preparing for total war. How many ships do they have? Asked Captain Morden of the Ashanti, his insectoid features showing concern. Intelligence estimates. Over 2,000 vessels, replied General Martinez, the former engineer who had become the coalition's military coordinator, including 12 planet killers and at least 50 dreadnoughts equipped with the latest anti-coalition technology. The numbers were staggering. Despite their growth, the coalition could field perhaps 600 ships, most of them converted. Civilian vessels with improvised weapons. By any reasonable calculation, they were facing annihilation. What are our options? Chen asked the Assembly. Captain Senthara of the Vorthen crystal ships spoke first. My people's sensors have detected massive military buildups in 14 consortium core systems. They're not just preparing to attack us, they're preparing to destroy us completely. The same intelligence networks that brought us information about consortium troop movements also bring us other news, added Cathara. On 47 consortium worlds, civilian populations are organizing protests. They don't want their governments to wage war against people whose only crime was offering hope to the hopeless. Chen felt a familiar stirring of the stubborn determination that had gotten her into this situation in the first place. So we have two problems: a military force we can't defeat and a political situation that might not require defeat. What do you mean? Dr. Okafor asked. I mean, maybe we're approaching this wrong. We keep thinking about this as a war between the coalition and the consortium. But what if it's really a choice between two different ways of thinking about civilization? Over the following days, as the consortium deadline approached, the coalition leadership developed a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Instead of preparing for military defense, they would go on the offensive, not with weapons but with ideas. We're going to broadcast directly to every consortium world, Chen explained to the assembled fleet commanders. Not propaganda or threats, but simple truth. We'll show them what we've built here, how different species work together, how conflicts can be resolved without violence. The consortium will try to jam our transmissions, Lieutenant Commander Park pointed out. He had been promoted to Admiral Park when the coalition fleet grew beyond what one captain could manage. That's where our Zilani friends come in, Chen replied with a smile. Elder Cathara had been working with coalition scientists to develop something unprecedented, a bioluminescent communication network that could span entire star systems. Traditional radio waves could be blocked or jammed, but the organic signals the Zilani generated operated on quantum frequencies that were nearly impossible to interfere with. We'll establish relay stations throughout consortium space, Cathara explained. Every Zilani colony, every coalition outpost, every friendly world will become part of the network. They can't jam all of us without destroying their own communication infrastructure. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of fighting the consortium's military, they would appeal directly to its citizens, instead of matching force. With force, they would offer hope against fear, but first they had to survive the coming assault. 3 weeks before the consortium deadline, Admiral Vexhan arrived in the Tau Ceti system commanding the largest battle fleet in galactic history. The Dominion had been repaired and upgraded, joined by vessels from every major consortium military force. The combined armada stretched across space like a mechanical constellation. This is Admiral Vexhan of the Galactic Consortium. His voice boomed across all frequencies. By order of the High Council, this illegal gathering will disperse immediately. Any vessel that fails to surrender will be destroyed without further warning. The response came not from Admiral Chen, but from an unexpected source. A 12-year-old Zilani named Kethini, Elder Cathara's great-niece, who had become something of a celebrity throughout coalition space for her brilliant bioluminescent artwork. Admiral Vexhan, the child said in her musical voice. My name is Kethini. I was born on the refugee ships during our escape from Kepler 442b. I want to know why you think it's wrong for different people to be friends and help each other. The question, broadcast across the galaxy through the bioluminescent network, was simple enough for a child to understand but profound enough to shake governments. On consortium worlds, citizens gathered around their communication devices to hear how their military would respond to a child's innocent question. Vexhan was silent for a long moment. How do you explain to a child that political stability requires maintaining the established order? How do you justify preparing to destroy a civilization that welcomes refugees and promotes cooperation? Little one, he finally replied, the universe is more complicated than you understand. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made to protect everyone's security. But whose security are you protecting? Cathene asked. The coalition has never attacked anyone. We just help people who need help and welcome anyone who wants to join us. How does that threaten security? Across consortium space, citizens were asking the same question. On 47 worlds, protest demonstrations had grown into planet-wide movements demanding that their governments refuse to participate in the assault on the coalition. But the consortium leadership had committed too much to back down now. If the coalition succeeded, it would prove that their way of governing was not only wrong but unnecessary. They had to destroy the alternative before it inspired total rebellion. The battle began with the largest display of military power in galactic history. 2,000 consortium warships opened fire simultaneously, their combined energy output capable of destroying entire solar systems. The attack was designed to be so overwhelming that resistance would be impossible. Instead, something unprecedented happened. As the massive barrage of energy weapons and missiles streaked toward the coalition fleet, every Zelani in the Tau Ceti system, all 3.2 million of them, linked their bioluminescent abilities into a single network. But they weren't trying to create shields or weapons, they were creating art. The combined bioluminescence of millions of beings created a light show that spanned the entire star system. Patterns of incredible beauty danced between the stars, telling the story of the coalition's formation, the rescue from Kepler 442b, the cooperation between species, the welcome given to refugees. The consortium weapons struck their targets, but something extraordinary happened. The coalition ships didn't just defend themselves. They transformed the attack into something beautiful. Forthan crystal hulls sang, with harmonic frequencies that turned destructive energy into pure music. Ashanti bioelectric systems converted weapons fire into stunning electrical displays. Mycelian organic armor absorbed impacts and bloomed into spectacular flower formations that spread across the hulls of damaged ships. Every weapon fired at the coalition was transformed into art, music, or light. The galaxy watched in amazement, as the most devastating military assault in history became the most beautiful display of creation. And Admiral Vexhan, the crystal being said, her musical voice carrying across all frequencies, you are welcome to join us. Your species, your people, your own personal history. None of that matters. If you choose to stand with us instead of against us, we will welcome you with open arms. For a moment, Vexhan felt something he had never experienced: doubt. What if the coalition was right? What if strength really did come from cooperation instead of domination? What if he had spent his entire life serving a system that was fundamentally wrong? But pride and conditioning ran too deep. I am a Drakmor warrior, he replied. I do not surrender to inferior species. Then you misunderstand what we're offering, Elder Kithara said gently. We're not asking you to surrender. We're asking you to come home. The final phase of the battle was brief and decisive. The handful of ships that remained loyal to Admiral Vexhan found themselves hopelessly outnumbered by their own former allies. Coalition vessels, crewed by mixed species working in perfect harmony, stood alongside consortium defectors who had chosen hope over fear. Admiral Vexhan's flagship, the Dominion, fought alone against impossible odds until its weapons were disabled and its engines crippled. As rescue ships moved in to evacuate the crew, Vexhan made one last desperate attempt to complete his mission. If I cannot destroy you, he transmitted to the coalition fleet, then I will deny you this victory. The Dominion's self-destruct sequence began counting down, its massive explosion designed to take out every ship in the immediate vicinity. But the Coalition response was immediate and coordinated. Mycelian bioships surrounded the doomed dreadnought, their organic hulls absorbing and containing the blast. Fourth-hand crystal vessels sang harmonies that disrupted the explosion's energy patterns. Human ships coordinated the rescue operation, while Zalani bioluminescence guided evacuating personnel to safety. When the smoke cleared, the Dominion was gone, but every member of her crew had been rescued. Even Admiral Vexhan found himself aboard a Coalition medical ship, being treated by doctors from 6 different species working together to save his life. Why? He asked Admiral Chen when she visited him in the medical bay. I tried to destroy you. Why save me? Chen sat down beside his bed, looking tired but peaceful. Because that's what we do. We don't abandon people, even people who were our enemies a few hours ago. Especially not them, actually. Vexhan stared at the ceiling, trying to understand a philosophy that made no sense according to everything he had been taught. The Consortium will never accept this. They'll keep sending fleets until you're destroyed. Maybe, Chen admitted. But I don't think so. Want to know why? She activated a wall display showing subspace communication feeds from across the galaxy. On world after world, Consortium citizens were celebrating the Coalition's victory and demanding that their own governments adopt similar policies of cooperation and inclusion. Your attack didn't destroy us, Chen explained. It introduced us to the entire galaxy. Every species that watched the battle saw the same thing. A civilization that turns weapons into art, that welcomes its enemies as friends, that chooses cooperation over conquest. Most beings in the universe want to live that way. They just never thought it was possible. Over the following months, the transformation of galactic politics accelerated beyond anyone's imagination. Consortium member worlds began defecting, en masse, not through military conquest but through simple choice. Species after species voted to leave the old system and join the Coalition of Haven. The Consortium leadership, faced with the collapse of their authority, finally requested a formal negotiation. Prime Minister Veltar herself traveled to Haven Station for talks with the Coalition leadership. What do you want? She asked Admiral Chen bluntly during their first meeting. Nothing you can't give freely, Chen replied. We want every species to have the right to determine their own fate. We want refugees to find welcome instead of rejection. We want cooperation to be more profitable than conquest. We want the strong to protect the weak instead of exploiting them. And if the Consortium agrees to these principles, then the Consortium becomes part of the Coalition. We're not trying to destroy your government, Prime Minister. We're trying to transform it into something better. Veltar studied the human admiral for a long moment. You realize what you're asking? You want us to abandon thousands of years of political structure, economic systems, military doctrine, everything that made us the dominant power in the galaxy. Yes, Chen said simply, because that dominance was built on the suffering of others, and because we've proven there's a better way. The negotiations lasted for months, but the outcome was never really in doubt. With over half of their former territory already part of the Coalition, the Consortium leadership had no choice but to accept the new reality. The formal signing ceremony took place 1 year later in the same council chamber where the Coalition had first debated how to respond to Consortium threats. Representatives from over 800 species gathered to witness the creation of the Galactic Alliance of Free Worlds, a government based on voluntary association, mutual aid, and the radical idea that every sentient being had inherent worth. Elder Kithara, now ancient but still vibrant, gave the closing address to the historic gathering. My friends, she said, her bioluminescent patterns creating patterns of incredible beauty throughout the chamber. We have accomplished something that many thought impossible. We have proven that different peoples can not only live together in peace, but can create something greater than any of us could achieve alone. She paused, looking around at the incredible diversity of beings filling the chamber, humans and Zalani, Vorthan, and Ashanti, former consortium officials and rescued refugees all working together as equals. But let us remember how this began. A small group of humans heard a cry for help from people they had never met, belonging to a species they knew nothing about. They did not ask what they would gain by helping. They did not calculate whether rescue would be profitable. They simply said, "We hear you. We're coming. We will not let you face this alone." The applause that followed lasted for nearly 10 minutes as hundreds of species expressed their approval in their own unique ways. When the ceremony ended, Admiral Chen found herself standing on the observation deck of Haven Station, looking out at the bustling spaceport that had become the heart of galactic civilization. Ships from hundreds of worlds came and went constantly, carrying trade goods, cultural exchanges, refugees seeking new homes, and explorers setting out to discover what lay beyond the known galaxy. Dr. Okafor joined her at the viewport, looking as amazed as ever by how their universe had changed. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Giving up your career in the Earth fleet, becoming an outlaw? Starting a revolution that changed the entire galaxy?" Chen smiled, watching a group of human and Zalani children playing together in the station's central park, their laughter and bioluminescent games creating joy that transcended species barriers. "Jim," she said, "we set out to save one dying species. Instead, we saved the idea that species can choose to save each other. I think that's a pretty good return on investment." As if to emphasize her point, an announcement echoed through the station. Another refugee fleet had arrived, this one carrying survivors from a solar system destroyed by natural disaster. Within minutes, coalition vessels were moving to provide aid, shelter, and welcome to the newcomers. The cycle continued, as it had for the past 3 years, and as it would for generations to come. When someone cried out for help, the coalition answered. When someone was rejected by others as worthless, the coalition proved them wrong. When someone needed a place to belong, the coalition said the words that had started it all. "We hear you. We're coming. With you always." Elder Kithara, now in her final years, often said that humans had taught the galaxy its most important lesson, that the strongest civilizations were not those that conquered others, but those that chose to stand with others when standing was hard. The galaxy had learned that lesson well. In star systems across the known universe, species that had once been enemies now worked as partners. Refugees found homes. The weak were protected. The forgotten were remembered. And in the deep space between the stars, where human ships continued their missions of exploration and aid, each vessel carried the same inscription on its hull, a simple promise in 1,000 different languages, but always meaning the same thing. With you always. The revolution that began with one captain's refusal to abandon a dying species had become something greater than anyone had imagined. A new way of thinking about what it meant to be alive in a universe full of other living beings. It was perhaps the most human thing of all, the stubborn insistence that everyone mattered regardless of the cost of proving it. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, everyone agreed, was exactly as it should be.